Hi, welcome into another week of Georgia football. The Bulldogs in Kentucky. This is a big one. This is a big one. 5-0, both teams ranked, both teams undefeated in SEC play. It's in Athens on Saturday night, 7 o'clock. Broadcast time on the Bulldogs Sports Network is 3 p.m. on Saturday afternoon. And we want to welcome in our analysts, if you will. And I say that tongue in cheek. DJ Shockley and Russ Tanner, both former Bulldog greats, and with a lot to say about how this Bulldogs team is playing this season. Guys coming out of Auburn, that was probably as tough as I think you guys thought it was going in. Dogs win it by 27-20, remain undefeated. Quick thoughts before we look at Kentucky on how the Dogs looked last week.
You know what? I thought that was the perfect scenario of what you wanted if you're Kirby Smart, because obviously you had a test at home versus South Carolina, kind of a half test, and then you find out and you end up going and beat them by 10, and obviously things are good, you're at home. But I think you find out so much more about your team on the road when you go out and have that kind of performance. And I thought obviously the defense, had a couple plays here and there where they had some misfits and lost contain and allowed the quarterback to get on the edge a couple times. But I thought for the most part, you kind of corralled them, not allowed them to have the monster plays. They had the big run. But other than that, this defense was very stingy, was very nasty. But on the other side, I thought the offense, kind of showed their mettle. They went out and obviously was down 10-0. Defenses had to get some stops. And then the offense, did their part, and especially late in the ball game when you needed a big-time drive, when you need a big-time throw from Carson, when you needed some of your big-time players to step up, like a Brock Bowers or Lad McConkey on third down, this was the perfect setting. It was loud, it was raucous, it was everything we talked about last week about the environment, and you got everything you wanted and more. And the thing that I thought was really cool to see was Coach Smart at halftime. There was a lot of ways I thought he would probably go. But the one thing he said that kind of surprised me was, hey, he was like, fellas, I'm proud of you. Down 10-0 on the road, to be able to come back, tie this thing up 10-10. Now we're sitting with the ball coming out of halftime, got a chance to, go and, prove ourselves on the road. But I was proud of the resiliency and the composure that you guys, kind of played within that first half with the hostile environment. And I think it paid off for his team. So it was fun to watch his team go battle, especially in the tough plays like that. And then even more than that, be able to come out with a win where your offense goes to get it and your defense shuts them down.
Yeah. You never hear Shock or myself or anybody else who's ever been in that arena. The Gladiator never says that the arena is not hostile. Going into that situation that it's a hard place to play. Auburn is one of the top 2 or 3 places to play in the SEC as far as consistently loud crowds, etc. And I think it was a good thing for Georgia. Like Shock said, adversity builds a lot of character. And for a team, that character is what you try to figure out what you have as your season moves on. How are you going to respond when the crap hits the fan, so to speak? And it finally hit the fan for Georgia a little bit, and they had to respond. We tried the last 2 seasons, we won national championships, and halfway through both those seasons, we're still trying to fire Stetson Bennett as a starting quarterback until he had a moment that put him in a position where we can believe in what he's doing and, hitch our wagon to that horse, so to speak. And I'm hoping this was Carson Beck's moment, because Carson's been very safe with the football. He's made smart decisions. He hasn't put us in bad situations. But up until this point, he hasn't had to do anything special to go win a game with the team. And now it makes it a lot easier to do something special when you're throwing the ball to number 19. He makes you a much more special quarterback. But Carson finally sat back and ripped the ball down the field, threw it into some tight windows, and actually put the team on his back just a little bit and said, all right, we can go get this thing. So I'm hopeful that this was kind of that coming out party for Carson Beck that every quarterback experiences at some point in their career. Because in modern college football, the team goes to the quarterback more times than not. And you got to have that dude making plays for you. So for him to go into that arena against that battle, the battle that was Auburn, and to come out on top, I think it's going to pay a lot of dividends for us down this stretch we're about to hit.
Scott, if, if you play quarterback, you would be an all SEC guy. We already know that. But if you throw on the number 19, Scott Howard, you are a all freaking American, because this guy makes you so good.
How do you deal, Shock, as a quarterback in that situation, right? They're trying to cover Brock Bowers, but you also know that he's that dude, right? What's Carson's mindset as a quarterback when you know if you throw the ball close to him, he's going to get it. I mean, are you worried about coverage? Do you predetermine how you're getting the ball to him? Like, how does Carson decide it?
You know, you never predetermine it, but you also know where your best players are. And sometimes coverage doesn't matter. There was a play in the ball game where he's running down the seam and Carson puts it on the back shoulder and he kind of snatches it with one arm. That's covered. That is probably you should go somewhere else. But because you have 19, because you have faith in his ability and be able to catch the football, like you mentioned, with it anywhere around him, you give him a chance. I remember there were times where, if you guys can imagine, if you run a stick route, you go up 5 yards and you go outside and you run towards the sideline. We played Auburn one year and we had Leonard Pope on a stick route and their defensive back was playing outside leverage. You're not supposed to throw that football. But guess what? I believed in Pope that much that he would win. I still threw him the rock. I think that's what you do with number 19. If one guy is there, I feel good about it. I don't care where he is. I'm going to give him a chance.
Throw Brock the rock.
Throw Brock the rock.
Guys, every week I watch the warm-up drills. Guys come out in no shoulder pads, no helmets. Usually they've had the football pants on. They've got T-shirt, and they're running routes, loosening up. And the receivers always run a one-handed catch drill. And they do it over and over and over. One-handed catch. I mean, Brock did that twice, I think, on the touchdown drive at the end of the game. He made 2 one-handed catches. One, was behind his body. And I know most of these guys wear gloves. What's on the gloves that allows them to catch that ball? Or are their hands so gigantic they just swallow up the football? And it's, I remember playing backyard football, making a one-handed grab. The guys you were playing with marveled if you could make a one-handed catch. Now it's just commonplace.
Yeah, the technology of the gloves go a long way. I don't know what they put on them, but there is no doubt, by the way, that the gloves make a big difference. You were to give Randy Moss and Jerry Rice and those guys the glove technology had today, you would have saw some freaky things. But on the same point, anything you practice, you can improve. So those guys now see more and more coverages are tighter, the windows are smaller. They've got to be able to snag a ball that's not perfect. So, yeah, they rep it all the time.
And, Scott, I think you're right, man. I think them going through that process every single day, and, we watch it on Saturday mornings or Saturday afternoons when they're doing warm-ups, but this is something I know they do Monday through Friday. It's something that B-Mac puts them through. I know Coach Hartley puts them through it as well. These are things they practice because you think about in a game, things are unorthodox. You see quarterbacks working on off-platform throws. You watch, linemen, do their, get their combo block, getting up to the next level, making sure that you got eyes on that defense. I mean, there's so many things that you have to practice so that when you get in the game, it's just second nature to you. So I think these guys do that kind of stuff all the time. And when it happens in a game, yeah, you're excited, like, wow, that was crazy. But you look back on the preparation, you're like, okay, well, I see why they were able to make it happen because they do it all the time.
Georgia's got so many winning streaks going right now, and that includes the Kentucky series. They've won 13 straight in this series. I know every year is independent of itself, but does that streak start to get in your head if you're, one team or the other? It's like, oh, man, we can't beat these guys, and that's the situation this week when you've got 2 good teams meeting in Athens Saturday night.
I think when we look back as far as can it get in your head? Absolutely. I can remember back during our time, the Florida week, it always seemed like everybody tightened up a little bit. A little bit of the pucker factor, what I'm talking about, was seemed to happen a little bit. So you can definitely tighten up on it. But I feel like the Kentucky team this year that's coming in, they probably are not thinking about the last 12 or 13 years of Kentucky football because these guys are really good. And this isn't us just talking on the radio broadcast here trying to put content out. They're really good. And the problem for Georgia this week, they're really good where Georgia has struggled some. They're really good up front. They run the football with authority in a very physical way. And Auburn kind of exposed some of the weaknesses we got there from a run fit standpoint, how we stop some of the power stuff they're putting at us. And then their big number 0 on the D-line is a problem. So they're really good in place where Georgia still has some questions as far as the identity of this team. So to answer your question, I don't think Kentucky's coming in thinking, oh, boy, we've lost 13 in a row. Whatever shall we do? Like, that's not going to be their mindset. They're coming in for blood because they feel like Georgia's vulnerable this year. They feel like they're rolling, and they know, by the way, for Kentucky, every week the analysts say this is the biggest game in the history of Kentucky football, because the farther they go into the season with a chance to make it to the SEC championship, that potential gets ratcheted up. If they beat Georgia, they're at the top of the pack in the SEC. And the biggest test in front of them has been knocked out and accomplished it. They're going to be jacked out of their minds to come in here with a chance, in their mind, a legitimate chance. And it is a legitimate chance to knock the champs down.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at just last year, how close of a game that was. How much confidence does Kentucky have coming into this game after what happened last year? And obviously you had wind, you had cold, they was at home, whatever it is. They felt like they were in that ball game and had a chance, So there's always things that they could build on and say, all right, yeah, they're the number one team in the country. Yeah, they've been doing it for the last few years. But hey, like Russ just said, we're 5-0. We feel like we got a really good football team. We got a lot of great players on our team. Why not us? And, crazy things have happened. But I know for one thing, Kirby won't allow Georgia to have that kind of mindset of, yeah, we've dominated these guys. This is kind of the mainstay of what happens when we play Kentucky, because every year is freaking different. Every circumstance is inside of a game. The situational stuff is totally different. So I don't think Georgia comes in with that mentality. And like Russ said, I don't think Kentucky does either. I think a lot of these kids can't even remember, 5 years ago. Maybe they weren't even on the team. You're talking about 12, 13 games ago. It won't even matter to them. They're thinking about the here and now.
And they actually just beat the brakes off of Florida Gators, by the way. So they're feeling really good because they freaking demolished Florida when they played them.
Well, they had, Florida had that long winning streak going on. Now suddenly they've lost 3 in a row to Kentucky. So to your points, and Shock, I think you mentioned, some of these guys may not have been on the team last year. Boy, they got a bunch of transfers in, including the quarterback, including Ray Davis, who went off on the Gators last week with 280 yards. When he was at Vanderbilt last year, I thought, and Georgia won that game 55-0, I think it was last year over Vanderbilt. But you see Davis run the football. I was like, this guy's pretty good.
Yeah,
he's a good running back in a 55-0 game. I'm thinking that. And then last week we saw what he could really do with good players around him as well.
Yeah, he's one of those type of backs that you got to be wary of, because he can take it to the house on you. He can be a physical runner. I heard Kirby this week say he reminds him of DeAndre Swift, but bigger. So that tells you, oh my goodness, he has the moves of a Swift, but also the physicality to run over guys. This guy's averaging, close to 8 yards a carry. He's got almost 600 yards. He's the 4th leading rusher in the country. That tells you how good this guy is. And the guy is, going to come in here with huge confidence as well. And like you mentioned, he played against his Georgia team. He knows what they're about. And he had a pretty good day. So it's going to be fun to see what he does. The only thing that, we may be excited about is we don't have to worry about the QB run part of the game this week as we did last week. I mean, I think Devin Leary has like 9 carries for negative 17 yards. Now, that don't mean he won't go out and bust one out on us or, have a scramble run or something. But this is a guy who is looking to throw the rock. And also, he's not as accurate either. I think he's completing like 53%. Yeah. But guess what? The run game is where they, kind of hold their hat. And that's where the Kentucky's always been the most physical team that, you play every single year. And they're going to come in feeling like, hey, we can bring our lunch pail to this game. They just watch Auburn put up over 200 yards of rushing against us. So they're going to feel good about the things that they can do up front in the physicality part of the game and the offensive line being able to run the ball.
Is this a line of scrimmage game, Russ? Physicality, as we hear the word thrown about. We heard Tate Ratledge talk about that earlier this week, how physical Kentucky is every year. And that's offense and defense. Is this a line of scrimmage game? Whoever dominates that is probably going to win this.
Look, I love watching Kentucky play football when they're not playing Georgia because of the style of football they play. In the current world of college football, where it's spread everybody out, dink and dunk, RPO, sometimes when you line up in front of another dude, you try to knock his teeth out the back of his throat, that wins in football games. That's what Kentucky has done so far this year with Ray Davis. I've got a friend that does grading, player grading, and he grades every player for every college team every week. And he was talking about how physical Kentucky is up front. And he tweeted this week, I saw it. He said, Kentucky's running game is what I wish Georgia's would turn into. Meaning they line up and they try to physically knock people out from in front of them. And the biggest question for Georgia's defense right now has been the defensive line. They caught a lot of flack this week. Kirby had to field questions in his press conference about run fit, about the physicality inside, about can our linebackers come up and make plays. Nolan Smith last year was talking about Georgia's strength of defense. He said Georgia does more with less. And what he meant with that was we were probably the best in the country at stopping the run with 6 guys in the box, 4 down linemen, 2 linebackers. This year, we've been gashed. Auburn last week gashed us over and over, especially when Robbie Ashford got in. I'm glad they took him out, by the way. So, yeah, this is the game for Georgia up front. Like the old you remember when we played Alabama, was it 02 or 03? And one of the talking heads said, Georgia's not man enough to go win this game. We got bumper stickers made up, had T-shirts printed that said man enough on it. I mean, there's something about when your metal gets tested up front. Pat Dye, that's right. That is who said it. You determine who you are as a lineman in particular, and that's where football games are won and lost. We said earlier the quarterback's the bell cow. That is true. That's all fine and good. But if your quarterback he can throw 53%, as O'Leary has, whatever the number Shock said was, if your linemen are knocking people out of the way and Ray Davis is coming at your face. And Kentucky's done that better than anybody in the SEC so far this year.
Do you guys feel like Georgia's done okay against running backs, not as much against quarterbacks? I mean, that was the case last week as Thorne and Ashford were having all the success running the football, not so much their running back stable.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, I guess, how the season's gone, you've corralled those guys pretty well. And it's the old adage, man. I remember when I played, people always say, I remember Bubba used to say all the time, nobody is accounting for the quarterback. And it's one of those things, you get into a ball game, even though you know you have a quarterback that can run, if you have to worry about him on 65, 70 plays in a ball game, that's tough because you got a lot of different keys as a linebacker, as safety, corners, whatever you got to read in the run game to make your defense right. And then you got to add on the quarterback too. And we saw last week, they were using those, Russ, like you mentioned, those powers and counters, but they was using them with the quarterback. So now you got an extra guy on the edge after he fakes it to the running back that you have to make sure he doesn't have the football. So I think that's why the added dimension of the quarterback really gives teams and defenses a lot of stress, and why if you just have to focus on the running back, you got a better opportunity. But this is an offense that they're going to find ways to try to roll grade you with their running back. And this is a perfectly made game for the Dogs because guess what? Kentucky's going to come right at you, and they're going to say, stop us. If you can't stop us, it's going to be a long day.
Yeah. There ain't a lot of surprises this week, right? We know what's coming. Last week you had to figure out, is it Peyton Form? Is it Robbie Ashford? Robbie Ashford is a freak athlete, by the way. So you had to figure out what was coming there. This week, we're pretty sure. Ray Davis is going that way, and if he's not, O'Leary's throwing it that way. And you got to stop it. I mean, it's a matter of, can you execute what you're supposed to do better than they can? Who makes sure that they're the most physical team at the point of attack, and who goes out and makes the plays when they're there to be had?
What does Georgia counter with in that instance, Russ? If Kentucky's doing that, what does Georgia counter with offensively and defensively?
So from a defensive standpoint for us, the issue for Georgia, and this is a problem. If they're pounding you, you've got to bring another guy in the box. You've got to walk a linebacker back inside, take him out of coverage. You got to roll a safety down to get more run support. The running the football is a math equation. If you got more people blocking than they've got guys tackling, it usually works out well for you. And we talk about the number of guys in the box. It's just a matter of numbers. If you got 7 people blocking 6, the defense is in a bad spot. If you got 7 people trying to stop 6, you're probably going to stop them. But when that happens, Kentucky now will have more opportunities to throw the ball out wide. So watching to see if Georgia can shut Ray Davis down early without having to bring extra help in the box, without having to get out of their nickel package with 3 safeties on the field. And to stop Ray Davis. If Georgia can stop Ray Davis with 3 safeties on the field, Kentucky's got a long day. They're not going to be able to do anything. So we'll see with that. That's what Georgia's got to do. And on the other side, man, like we've got to start running the ball downhill and then taking shots and then hitting the shots. We're taking shots. If there's been a knock on Carson Beck early, it's that he's missed some open throws down the field. And hopefully he's going to get there this week. So it all comes down to the physical running game. It all comes down to it, without a doubt.
I think Russell's spot on with that. The only thing I'll add to the defensive side, and he knows this as good as anybody else, penetration kills a running game. If you can find ways to get penetration, you can find ways to play on the other side of the line of scrimmage, then guess what? You get that running back to pit his feet a little bit, pitter-patter, make him cut a little bit, then you got time for your other guys to get home. So try to get penetration. Try to change that line of scrimmage. Try to knock some guys back so that you can change that line of scrimmage and not allow Ray Davis to get going, then you got an opportunity to slow him down, and then all the cavalry can come. And I totally agree with what Russ talked about on the offensive side of the ball. You got to hit those opportunities. In a game like this, if you got a guy running wide open, you got to make them pay. If they bust a coverage and you got Oscar Deb running right through the middle of the seam, you got to hit it. I think that's one of the biggest things that Georgia can put a lot of pressure on people is they've had tons of opportunities and they've stretched the field. And people have crying about Coach Bobo not stretching the field enough. Well, there are tons of shot plays called. Trust me, fans, if you hear this, I'm on the sideline, I'm listening, I'm talking to Vandergriff, I'm talking to Gunnar Stockton during plays, and they're calling tons of shot plays, but sometimes the coverage just does not dictate it, and Carson does a good job of checking it down. So this is a game where if you get those opportunities, you got to hit him, but also you have to be able to run the football, I think, on early downs. If you can run the ball in an early down situation, that makes third down whatever you want it to be. So the physicality you have to match on both sides of the line of scrimmage for this game, and then also your skill guys got to show up and win their one-on-ones because both teams are going to add an extra guy to the box because they don't want anybody running. So on the outside, guess what? You got one-on-ones. You got to hit those.
Scott, can I ask Shock another question about that?
Yeah.
I mean, you're the host, so I feel like I got to ask permission to ask a question. All right, here we go.
No.
All right, so Shock, I actually love listening to Kirby's post-game comments, his press conferences, and all that because I think he gives you a lot more information if you're listening. And one thing he said this week was they asked him right after the game. I don't know if you saw it. You were on the field getting ready for your stuff, but they said, what changed in the second half with Carson Beck? And he said something essential like, well, I'm glad he finally started looking backside in cover 2, or else Bobo was going to kill him. So Coach Bobo's caught heat this year because he's the new offensive coordinator. That's just what happens. But talk about that for a second. I mean, what's he saying when he finally started looking backside? By the way, we hit Brock Bowers like 5 consecutive passes after that. But Kirby said post-game, once he finally started looking backside in cover 2, there was things wide open. Like, why is that?
And Russ, here's a great example of what you're asking is everybody can remember the Brock Bowers touchdown. He catches that end cut. That is backside on cover 2. Early in the ball game, they were playing a lot of, feint blitzes, show blitz, and then play zone out of it. And, it was kind of a lot going on. Later in the ball game, they went straight cover 2. And in cover 2, you got to find your cover 2 or zone beaters. And that was a cover 2 zone beat. On the front side, they had all go. And on the front side on all go versus coverage 2, you got a safety for the one go. You got a corner who can bail and cover that other go route. So now you have to get backside for a in cut and a pivot that works off that little weak side linebacker. Weak side linebacker jumps on the inside pivot. Guess what? Here comes Brock Bowers screaming wide open on the dig. So that's a great example of how he's able to get backside, Carson was, and find Brock on that dig. And guess what? There you go. You got a big cover 2 beater because that is what Auburn played a lot of late in that ball game. And I think that's what Kirby referenced it is that cover 2 area. You got to be able to find that zone inside of cover 2, whether it's in the middle or it's, on a dig like Brock went.
Yeah. And Ladd McConkey helped with that a lot too, by the way. Ladd's such a good route runner on that end cut where Brock scored the beautiful touchdown. If you watch it, the safety jumped Ladd because he ran such a good route over there. So having guys healthy, by the way, and having your dudes back playing for you makes a big difference for Carson Beck in that offense.
No doubt.
Hey guys, I think the only thing we're missing is a chalkboard with you guys, or a big whiteboard. Anyway, that was good stuff. Shock and Russ, great to see you as always. We'll see these guys again next week. It's Georgia and Kentucky Saturday night under the lights, 7:00. Airtime for the radio broadcast is 3 p.m. For your full afternoon and evening of Georgia football coverage. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And go Dog.
Go Dogs.